All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly DSS break. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're here live every week to talk about data science experiences and best practices with leading data professionals in a 15-minute break. I'm Anna Annison, CEO and founder of Formulated By, the home of Data Science Salon, and I'm streaming live here from our HQ located in the heart of Miami next to the Design District. And on today's segment, I have actually here Matthew Denesuk, who's the SVP of Data Analytics and AI at Royal Caribbean Group. And he's also here right at the port, which is really exciting. And Matt is responsible for establishing the productive use of data-driven and analytics-enabled approaches across the entire company. And I'm really excited to learn from him how this can be done via this center of excellence model that he's going to talk about. Thank you so much for joining us for this DSS break episode, Matt.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
No, it's really great to have you. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into, this job with Royal Caribbean. I know you've been there for a few years now.
Yeah, I've been here for a little over 3 years. I came here, maybe 6 months or so before the pandemic hit. But I've been here, for a fair amount of time now. Before this, I was at a company that I had co-founded. It was a company called Noodle.ai, and I with a few other folks started that company. It was based in San Francisco and in Bangalore. And that was kind of an analytics as a service company. And before that, I was at GE, where we had a center of excellence model that we employed across the company there as well, as the chief data science officer there. And then I was in IBM Research for many, many years, kind of plumbing the depths of applying data and analytics and AI, and from way back when we didn't use those terms even, but trying to apply those to business problems to make businesses work better.
Cool. No, that sounds like a really rich background. So you've been in the space, as I just got in the space, it's been like 10 years ago where they first started using the word data science, but before it was all about analytics, right? So it's definitely changed quite a bit.
Right.
So I know that you're the SVP of Data Analytics and AI at Royal Caribbean Group, which has over 85,000 employees, which is a whole of a lot. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about your responsibility in this role.
Sure. So it's actually, the overall mission is very, very broad. It's a company-wide, process-wide mission to just make the whole company behave more effectively, using data and modeling and everything else. And so it really covers the entire company. And then of course also to make sure it's effective. So to make sure we're tracking the KPIs that are relevant, certainly the financial ones, but also the guest satisfaction, environmental and governance KPIs. Making sure that we're moving those in meaningful ways. And as you referred to, we're doing it through kind of a center of excellence model, which I think is a pretty good model for our kind of company, which I would classify as a traditional enterprise. And by that, I mean it's a company that was doing well and making money and performing well prior to things being datafied. You know what I mean? So therefore, the datafication that is present around the company is done in sort of heterogeneous ways, very different, a lot of differences, not best practices being employed. And so I think with that, you really want to impact the whole company. So you wouldn't establish a department to just do it for everybody. You want to establish this center of excellence that kind of catalyzes the right kind of behaviors across the company.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Yeah, I talked to somebody from Nordstrom the other day, and they also said they had something very similar too, which It sounds like it works. And you guys have so many people on staff. Is it even possible to detect opportunities for AI in such a large organization?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think it's the challenge isn't so much identifying reasonable opportunities; it's the prioritization, because you get so many possible things you can do, and having to sort them out, align them with the other kind of key corporate objectives at a given point. That's kind of the challenge, and to do that well, there's a lot needs to happen. You need to deeply understand the business. I know when I came here, I'd never been on a cruise. I didn't know much of the cruise industry. Most of the people we hire don't have a background in this industry. And so you have to learn the business processes that are unique to this industry. And you also just have to learn the people. It is, at the end of the day, it's kind of a change management process. And, if you don't get to know the people and establish sort of trusting relationships, it's going to be very hard to catalyze things to be done differently.
Yeah, no, that sounds right. And can you tell me a little bit about what your typical day looks like usually? I'm sure it's very different day to day.
Yeah, I think there's probably not a typical day, but I can talk about sort of some of the typical things that happen on a given day. Certainly, there's the reviewing of the key projects. We're always involved in a number of with as I said, with the Center of Excellence model, we're both actually doing projects where we're using some serious experts doing advanced projects, as well as establishing the guidelines for people to do stuff themselves. So at any given point in time, we have a number of kind of important projects going on. So I'll be reviewing those, both the technical implementation, the impact, because one of the things too that to keep support, you have to show the business impact of the projects that you're doing. And so you have to be you can't do a project and then say, well, now how do we measure the impact? You have to that's part of the project development is incorporating the means or the sensors that are going to let you do that. And so kind of tracking how that's going, because that's a critical step. And then just the planning from that. So that's usually a lot of meetings with that in that regard. Generally meeting with stakeholders, so if you will, the customers across. In this case, we're internal, so that our customers are the different leaders and practitioners across the business. So meeting with them, just confirming how things are going, seeing what else we can do, planning with them, making sure our teams have what they need. Whether it's technology, whether it's the right resources, if they need any additional resources, and so forth. There's also spent a lot of time just planning and securing support for next year and the year after that. We have a portfolio in there. You got to get budgeting is a long-term process, and setting expectations for budgets and so forth. Also, probably one thing it is every day. Something's going on with recruiting every day. So
right.
That's a key thing, and it's a great environment for data scientists out there, because there's a lot of demand for them, and we spend a lot of time recruiting them. And of course, the other side of recruiting is retaining. So trying to maintain the right culture and environment, so you don't have to fill holes. You're just trying to grow. And so that's been, and then there's also, I think, time spent in more sporadic ways, just trying to stay abreast of what's going on, both sort of technically in the field. Like everybody, I'm sure you as well, you get, countless emails every day about this great new platform, this great new tool, this great new thing. And so there's too much to kind of follow up on everything, but, I want to make sure we don't miss new things that could really, really be helpful to us. So just spending time there, and also understanding just, the industry and where what's happening there. If there's anything happening that's relevant to us that should impact, how we're planning and so forth. So those I think are some of the key components.
Well, it sounds like you have really busy days. So
and then I try to sneak lunch in there too at some point.
Yeah, and just a quick question. You talked about retaining talent, and I know that you've been at Royal Caribbean for a while and you guys are hiring. Maybe you could say why you've stayed there for so long, because I know that sometimes folks like yourselves move around a lot. So what keeps you there? Is it the culture, or why would people be really excited to join you guys?
Yeah, I'd say a couple things there. So one, it is, not just saying this self-servingly, but it is a great company. I love the people here. I think I've talked to you about this before. I never thought I'd leave Northern California. I was very happy there.
Yeah, I know. You did say that.
When I talked to the recruiter here, she said, "Oh, just meet everybody. Just meet them and see. I think you'll." And I came and I thought this company is very serious about trying to transform, because a lot of companies aren't. There's a lot of companies that are more like, some senior leader in the company just says, "Hey, something's going on in this AI. We got to do something." And so they want to do something to kind of check the box, and there's not a commitment, and that's not as fun to be in. This company has a real and serious commitment to it. So there's that element of it. The other element is, and I know people do move around a lot. In my experience, however, you don't really learn, and you don't really are not able to have an impact very quickly in this space. Like it took a long time just to kind of get our team to understand the key elements of the business, to get the data organized in a way that it takes a lot of time. And so I think what keeps me, and I think keeps some of our best people here, is that fact that we're getting to that plateau of productivity, if you will, not plateau, whatever the range of the area, the region of high productivity. We've invested a lot We've learned a lot. We're poised to really have an impact, and that to me is what really makes this fun. Not moving around. And I think for the best people we have, they're really focused on learning and having an impact. And jumping around a lot, you tend not to do that because you don't really start, pushing the boundaries until you've gotten comfortable.
Right.
So I think so. So that's kind of my.
No, that makes sense. And yes, if you guys want to make an impact and be part of a cool company, come and join Royal Caribbean. It sounds like you guys are hiring. And
Absolutely,
I know that you also get, I know there's discounts on cruises too. So I think that might be a perk for some people too.
That's true. Yeah. So employees get you get some free cruises. That's and there's also, you can kind of go standby at any point in time. If there's openings, you can go on. So that's you can do as well. But you also get some free cruises, and even there's things like when we take a ship in to kind of update it or upgrade it. We before taking it out with our paying guests, we have a free cruise called a shakedown with employees and their families can come on it. So there's lots of opportunities to cruise if you come and work with us.
Cool. No, that sounds like a lot of fun. So, and as you mentioned above, RCC Group has a Center of Excellence, a model to apply data analytics and AI to the enterprise business processes. How does a Center of Excellence work at your organization, and what are the advantages of such model?
Yeah. So that's, I think, the concept of a Center of Excellence, and it is probably people mean different things by it, when they say it, but in my view, at least, the concept of a Center of Excellence means that you have certain capabilities that you want to be suffused for the entire organization. So rather than building a department that's just going to do it, like you could have an AI department, not a COE, and say, we're going to go build solutions for everybody, and we're going to do everything. That model tends to not work very well, I think, because there's just too much to do, and you do need people to embrace it and add to it, especially in the enterprise AI. And we've talked about this before. The difference between enterprise AI and sort of the more traditional AI you read about, the image recognition and natural language and self-driving cars and so forth, is that the problems are much more complicated than the data that you have to be able to solve it. So you have to bring human and domain knowledge into it to constrain the solution. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a key tenet of enterprise AI. And so I think, so you really need the whole business to be involved. That's why I think a Center of Excellence model that catalyzes things is kind of the right thing for us. And so in our case, what we do, and one thing that actually is not as common in COEs, I think, that we also own the data lake and the data warehouses for the company. So we manage those. We're constantly working to make the data more understandable, better labeled, easier to use, and so forth, for the whole company. So we do that. That's one thing. We do a lot of training, in analytics and business intelligence and data science and AI, data wrangling and all these areas, just training sessions. So we start establishing communities across the company. So there's formal training, but then there's these chat groups. They're all part of them. People ask questions and kind of form communities around these areas. So that's a key part of it. We also, as I mentioned, we have a really fantastic data science team that can build these solutions, working with our data engineers and our data analysts and the folks in the business, the people in IT, to build these AI solutions, the more advanced solutions, working very close with people in the business. So there is, and that's an important element too. Some COEs are kind of thin, meaning they don't have the person power to actually build and do things. They just kind of show and guide. If you can only show and guide, it's hard to really transform. You have to be able to do and show as well. So we have the teams that do that. And then we have teams that provide guidelines and sort of governance around best practices for data analytics and AI. And that's something like, again, in most traditional companies, I'd say like ours, you'll find there'll be some very useful solutions that have been built somewhere, but they're not documented. So if this person leaves the company, no one knows how it works. And that's just a state of maturity, right? For important corporate assets, they've got to be documented. You've got to have plans to improve them and so forth. So a lot of that is establishing that kind of, it's just a matter of maturity. Now, in companies that were kind of born in the datafied world, some of them started that way, so they don't have the issue. But traditional enterprises, which I think are probably 98% of enterprises in the country at least, there's that lack of best practice across the company.
Yeah, no, for sure. And do you think every organization would benefit from a Center of Excellence? Or does it have to be like a super large organization? It sounds like it's probably more enterprise focused, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've only done it and seen it in larger enterprises.
Right.
Obviously, and when we had a startup, of course, I was there from the very beginning as we grew, and we were always small enough that we didn't establish a formal COE because everybody's just there working together anyway. So I think probably to be useful, there's a certain level of scale that you would need for it. For companies that are more mature already, they might not need as much of that team that actually builds solutions that we have. Like if a company's already fairly mature in the data area, maybe there's enough suffused capability that they can do just the guidance and the management and the learning and teaching and so forth. But again, for most traditional enterprises, I think you also need that ability to build, to plan and build solutions.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. No, thanks for answering. And the last question I have for you is, what do you see as kind of the main trend for kind of 2022, 2023 for AI enterprise companies? Like what is the next hottest thing?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Because I don't know if there's a single hot thing from the enterprise AI area. There's a lot of great technical developments going on and so forth. But in terms of application to enterprise problems, I think probably what should be happening anyway, I think what leading companies will be doing in this area is formalizing and improving the means of combining human domain knowledge with the data-driven models, as you said. That's what really holds things back, I think. And you're seeing more people talk about that. I'm seeing a lot of technical work and frameworks come about, for doing that now. So I think that might be ready to take off, and some of the leading enterprises will be doing a lot of that. Kind of related to that, I think, is more rigor around explainability and feature impact. Especially in these enterprise areas, you're going in and you're maybe automating or providing some intelligence around a process that's already being done by humans in some way, and they usually will have the power to veto the deployment of it in some sense. So they need to for them to adopt it, they need to understand why it's doing what it's doing. So you have to be able to have the models be explainable, which really comes down to quantitative feature impact as well. So they understand when it makes a recommendation why it's doing that. So I think that's a more rigor around that, I think, is a key thing. And the last thing I think is, and I don't know if this is 2023 or maybe it's going to be 2024, but I think inevitably we're going to see less talk about sort of machine learning or AI in the enterprise space, and more just about establishing a science of business, right? And it just so happens that just like in certain areas of physics, certain kinds of integral analysis are the tool that works best. It turns out in enterprise AI, machine learning and techniques we traditionally associate with AI are very effective, but they're not the only techniques. I think especially as we try to incorporate that human domain knowledge, it's really about just thinking scientifically about business problems, getting data. Science is always about data first, and then applying human ingenuity and the best mathematical techniques to try to understand the business better from a scientific perspective.
That's right. And generating more revenue right through that. So
right, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Matt, and for sharing this all great information about insights from the enterprise perspective. It was such a pleasure to have you here. And you can actually join Matt and 25 other speakers at Data Science Salon Miami, which is coming up in person and virtually on September 21st. We're really excited to be back in person. And Matt, it's going to be great to have you there as a speaker so you could go deeper on this topic. And the whole conference is going to be focused on machine learning and AI in the enterprise. So it's going to be a great day and a whole week of different events. We're calling it the Miami Machine Learning Week with our South Florida partners. There's going to be a ton of things to check out. So we'll actually share a link to that in the comments section. And I hope the rest of you guys have a great week. And again, thanks, Matt. It was really nice to talk to you today.
Well, thank you, Anna. This was my pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to Miami Machine Learning Week.
All right. Have a good week, guys. Bye.